Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Calling All Devs, our series where we take questions from you, the Star Citizen backer, and pose them directly to our developers. On this week's show, we are talking all things gameplay pillar with our gameplay pillar director, Mr. Richard Tyrer. Richard, how you doing, man?
Hello, I'm doing very well.
We got a lot of things to cover today. So the gameplay, we don't need to go into what the gameplay pillar is and everything, but suffice to say that a lot of the core elements that make up Squadron 42 and Star Citizen come from the gameplay pillar, the kind of day-to-day activities of the player.
Essentially, the core gameplay pillar is anything that's character-related or actor-related, and covers a lot of mixed features such as like fire or physical damage, and radar and scanning for both ships and on FPS. So if you look at like the two main feature pillars, you have obviously the vehicle pillar, and then there's a core gameplay pillar, and we kind of coordinate to create, if we're not doing it, they're doing it, and if they're not doing it, we're doing it, kind of thing. That's the best way to describe it.
Much better than my way, anyway. So today we're talking about some of the features that are in development under your pillar right now. Some are coming in the upcoming Alpha 3.15. Some will be coming a little bit later, as they're ready. Let's start off with the ones that people are perhaps most familiar with and are asking about. Let's start off with player healing. What can you tell us about where we're at, how we're doing, and what we can expect in the upcoming Alpha 3.15?
So player healing is kind of the next iteration of what we classified as actor status. So actor status T0, when we released around CitizenCon, probably about a year ago now. I think it was like 3.9, around about that. But that kind of covered the first iterations of the statuses that the player covers, such as like eating, drinking, hypothermia, all of those things. So this is the next iteration of that, which covers essentially injuries. So we already have in the game right now, the player has global health. So when you look on your HUD, you have the little first aid symbol, and it says, it's your global health from 0 to 100. Probably what people, some old backers probably will remember, is that we also have the little man. And the little man comprises up of the different body parts on you. So you've got your arms, you've got your legs, you've got your core and your head. And they are actually individual pools of health. But they used to be that, and that's what I say about some of the old backers, is that used to be the only thing that you could see. You didn't have the global health. We introduced the global health widget when we released Actor Status T0. But the way it works under the hood is that your limbs take damage. And so say I get shot in the arm, and let's say I lose 5 health points in the arm. What happens under the hood is it goes, okay, let's move 5 health points from the arm. And then it removes 5 health points from the global health. And it was always doing this. You just never saw it. So you only would ever die when your global health got to 0. It didn't matter that your limbs could get to 0. But it was waiting for your global health. So if I just kept shooting you in the arm, even though your arm might only have 20 health points, your global health might be 100 health points. So I keep shooting you, and your arm is now ruined, essentially. And then I could keep shooting you, and eventually you'd die. So there was always the intention that your limbs would basically have these statuses based on their own individual health. And then that would tie into this kind of the greater gameplay or the greater healing gameplay that we're talking about. So basically now what we've taken that system, and now we're starting to introduce the injuries that will apply to you when you take severe damage in your limbs. So you can have a traumatic head injury, you can have a traumatic body injury, you can have leg injuries and arm injuries. And the way it kind of works is that we're still using the health system, but we're kind of tracking this invisible number behind the number in the back end, which is kind of like body limb wear. So essentially, imagine if I keep shooting you in the arm, because we're talking about the arm, and you might lose all your health, and that's fine. If you then med pen it up and heal your arm back up, as we do now, if you haven't given them a lot of time, so you're not taking care of yourself, you keep getting shot in the arm, and you keep getting shot in the arm, basically that wear is going to keep building and building and building until you get essentially a broken arm. And we have 3 tiers or severities of injury. Tier 1 or severity 1 is the highest, that's the worst. Then we've got tier 2 and then tier 3. So essentially when you get a tier 3 injury, it's basically going, hey, now you're going to start suffering consequences of that injury. And you can't just get a med pen and go, cool, I'm just going to use my med pen. Your med pen will heal your limb health back up to full health. But the injuries on your arm will give you different effects and different statuses. And that's why I'm saying it's the next iteration of active status.
Right.
As you start to suffer from dehydration, as you start to suffer from hunger, or your stuff hyperthermia or hypothermia, you start to undergo these different states. So your stamina, you can't run as far, you can't sprint as long. We have lowered max health, and we have all the different eyeball effects that start to come on, whether there's the blood vision or whether it's the double vision and things like that. So or whether when you're cold, you start to shiver, or if you're under a severe pressure. So what we have is we have all these different statuses that trigger these internal body reactions to you suffering these injuries. So with the upcoming healing status, what we're doing is that you can then suffer this injury. Now, so let's say you've suffered an injury, and let's say it's a severity 3 or tier 3. So that's the lowest severe injury. So let's say if your broken arm, it's like a fracture. So make sure you've got a hairline fracture in your arm. So you can still use your arm, you can still do it, but maybe now you can't hold your gun as firm. So you've got a bit more weapon sway, and so on and so forth. So you start to notice it, you're thinking, okay, I've got this injury. Now my little man is showing my arm is red, and and it's showing I've got a tier 3. And it's like, okay, I need to go back to a medical facility to remove this injury. There's no way for you to remove the injuries out on the field. You have that injury, you have to then go and get it sorted. So you can then go back to a medical facility, and your medical facility, there are different classifications of the medical facilities. We have tier 1, 2, and 3. So a hospital or a physical location is going to be what are classified as a tier 1 facility. That's the best facilities you can get. So they will always be able to hear everything out. And you can see where I'm going here. Right. Tier 2 is the second, and 3rd is the worst. And the way that we're tiering it up is that tier 3 can heal anything that is any injuries that are tier 3. Tier 2 can heal any tier 2s, and tier 1 can heal tier 1 and below. By the way, I always wanted it the other way around, but we'd already committed to the tiering. So I was like, okay, fine, that's fine.
I could do a whole segment someday on the way that we tier things in all aspects of our development.
Exactly. So essentially what we have is we have this injury. So you've got this injury, and it's affecting how your character plays the game. It's affecting the effectiveness of your character, whether that's in combat, whether that's, in combat, or whether that's in mining, or how much you can carry, or how much you can sprint, all the different, whether you can see, how well you can see, all of these different things. So if you've got a traumatic head injury, for example, you might start to suffer double vision. Your stun resistance won't be as high, so if you get hit from force reactions, you'll fall over easier, things like that. So what we're introducing is we have this severity, and then when you get to the tier 1 severities, that's where you've taken significant amounts of damage. You've gone down, you've been revived, all of that kind of thing, and you're in a situation where, like tier 1, you might have like a multiple fractured arm where you can't use your arms anymore. You might be able to use your arms for like that one moment, like if it's your life or death dependent on, like, look, I need to get over that wall and I'm just gonna do it. Great. But you're not going to be able to like climb a 20-meter ladder. So if your ship's got a ladder, then you're in big problems. So this is where we started to introduce the healing and medical gameplay. So what we're doing from the healing and medical gameplay is that we have the multi-tool attachment for the multi-tool is the healing attachment, or sorry, the multi-tool healing attachment for the multi-tool. And then we have the dedicated healing gun. So the multi-tool itself will be an improved version of the MediPen. So the MediPen, essentially, what you'll be able to do with the MediPen is you'll be able to use it to heal up your health. It won't heal injuries. And you'll be able to use it on other people as well. So you'll be able to go and jab it into other people and help heal up some of their injuries. The multi-tool, what the multi-tool does is it allows you to heal up not injuries, it allows you to heal up the health. So you can heal up the limb health and your global health. And it also allows you to scan that person and understand what is wrong with them. Because the other thing that we're introducing as part of this pass of the healing or active status T1 is the downstate. So any time where you would have probably died in Star Citizen, or should I say 99% of the times, because there is going to be a 1%, and I'll explain that in a minute. Most of the times where you would have died, now you would go into the downstate. And the downstate is where you are unconscious, you are not dead, you are just unconscious, but you are slowly dying. And that slowly dying might take 2 hours. Now, at any point when you go down, you can choose to release and respawn. But when we later down the line, we introduce death of a spaceman, and we want people, and dying is like a real problem. you can wait for somebody to come and rescue you. So you might have a buddy, let's say we're playing together, I fall down a cliff or I get shot, I go down. You can then come and revive me either using a medical pen or using the multi-tool healing attachment. So I'm now no longer below 0 health. I'm healthy. I can now stand up. I might have injuries, I might not, depending on what's taking me down, but I'm back in the game. So death now has a way for you to be brought back. If you receive, and this is the 1%, if you receive more damage than your entire health bar again, so let's say you go from 100 to minus 100, aka you get shot with an Idris railgun and you're an EVA, you will go straight to death. That's like, go to jail, don't collect your 200, that's it. So essentially, I should not say go to jail because I think you have to go to jail. So that was a Monopoly reference. For the purposes of very clear, it means that you just die and respawn in a hospital or in a location. So if we go back down that road, so we have this downstate, so now people can revive you. But let's say I revive you and you're back, but now you've got the worst case severity. You've got a tier 1 injury in your legs. So you can't even stand up. You're in prone. You're locked in prone because your legs are shattered. So how do you go around? And I say shattered as in they're really bad. Okay, so I don't want to get into the details of the medical issues of what you're actually undergoing, but let's say they're the worst severity injuries and it prevents you from standing, right?
This is not getting into the details?
Yeah, exactly. This is the high level.
Yeah, but I do want to remind people that we're going to have a segment on ISC about all of this in like August or September. So
But anyway, so what happens is obviously if you then go into a tier 3, what we're introducing these different levels of drugs. And this is where we'll have medical like pen versions that you can stab into. So if you've just got the multi-tool and you scan somebody, it might say, oh, this person can't stand on his legs anymore because the pain is just too great. It's crippling him. Okay, I'm gonna stab him with my anesthetic pen. We'll have specific law names for them. Or I can use the dedicated healing gun, and the dedicated healing gun is I can scan them and I'll be able to choose which drugs I can then administer to the person who's injured to get them back on their feet. Now, it doesn't heal their injuries, it just removes the symptoms. And it removes the symptoms so that that person can then get back to a location, a medical facility. So if you've got a tier 3, that would be like maybe the Cutlass Red would be tier 3, the 890 jump, or the Carrick medical facilities, that might be like a tier 2 facility. And then the tier 1 facilities are like the dedicated hospitals, the physical locations. So you can get back to a medical facility and then go into a medical bed and then heal yourself from these injuries, and then you can continue. So essentially, these things aren't going to jump up on you. They're going to be things that happen over time. Like I said, it's like a wear in the background. It's almost like your vehicle's wearing. And then what we also have is we have this thing called the blood drug level. And that's what is monitored on your HUD as part of all of your active status widgets. So this is your suit monitoring the amount of basically external drugs inside your system. And that could be alcohol, it could be med pens, it could be all these other drugs that we're adding. I think we're adding 4, I know that we're adding 4 bespoke drugs to the system. And then you'll have to balance how much you can apply to them with the dosage, because you don't want to overdose them, because if you overdose them, they'll pass out. And then you'll have to decide, which ones you want to use, and that will give you a timer. So you'll be able to understand, like, okay, this is going to give them an hour here, an hour here. That's enough for us to get back to the ship and get back to a hospital location or a medical facility if you have a ship with medical facilities. So essentially what we're introducing is the healing profession. This is you're the first responder. This could be you out with your friend, so they've died or whatever, or later down the line, the whole profession around where death is going to be really important. And obviously with this, death comes inventory, so you'll lose your items on death if you choose to respawn. So this is people will be able to bring you back, give you drugs to alleviate the symptoms that are specific for your injuries, so that you can function to get back to a location. And if you don't have those drugs, you'll then be able to body drag somebody back to your ship, and then you'll be able to take them to a location that has medical facilities and actually drop them off at an emergency elevator, and you'll have a synchronized animation of putting them into the medical bed and then basically send them directly to hospital or heal them in a ship if you're putting them in there. So that covers kind of like, it's the healing gameplay, the healing profession, that revolves around healing your limbs, what the status is you're going to be receiving, the different hospital tierings and medical facilities. And then on top of that, the one thing that we're adding is the respawn, which is where you're going to be respawned. So now when you die, you won't just respawn in a hab. You'll respawn in a hospital facility. If you've respawned in that hospital facility, you'll be in a medical gown, and then you'll be able to access your own inventory. Obviously, if you've died somewhere outside of a landing zone, your gear will be left with your body. If you've died in a landing zone for whatever reason, what we're saying is that the security have come and collected you, and they've taken you to hospital, and they've revived you, so your gear will be in the room. So you'll be able to then take it with you. You'll also be able to choose which hospital you want to respawn at. So if you want to go and choose, I want to always respawn at Microtech, you can go and choose and say, this is my respawn point where I want to respawn. Tier 2 and above facilities or ships will only have the ability to respawn. So that means Tier 3 medical beds won't allow you to respawn. And Tier 3 medical beds are what's in the Cutlass Red right now. So that's going to be a loss of functionality, which is what it currently has. But this was always the intention. That was always a placeholder solution when we added it to the PU, I think, like the start of 2020, if I'm remembering correctly. So that kind of covers the research. And clearly we want to be able to have major hospital facilities at all of the major landing zones. We want to have clinics at truck stops and things like that. So essentially you're going around and choosing where you want to respawn. And then obviously that ties in later down the road in terms of like Death of a Spaceman, DNA integrity, which we've talked about previously, but I won't go into too much detail on that. But that covers the detail that I've talked about here is what's coming in the first iteration of healing and the healing gameplay.
In just the T1 that comes in Alpha 3.15.
Correct.
All right, so that's player healing. We've got other features that are under your gameplay pillar right now. We've got FPS radar, we've got hacking, we've got personal inventory. Where do we go next? What can you tell us?
Cool. So obviously, I think healing was a complex feature. So there was lots of things that are going on there. I know that the community is interested to hear where we're at with that. So I think it's good to get that out there so people can have the say. I think in terms of inventory, obviously we've talked about inventory already a lot. What we're trying to aim for to go alongside healing is that, you leave your stuff behind. Essentially, we won't be having this infinite bag of holding that you do right now with the PMA. We want to remove the PMA so that you're using the inner thought system that we're implementing that you've already probably seen using if you've used the Grinrock and going in and bringing up your interface. So essentially, the headline situation with healing is that we're going to local inventory. So you'll only have access to the things that you've put into the inventory at a landing zone. If you go into a ship, you'll only have access to the things that are inside that ship based off the inventory. It's still accessed by location, so you have to be in that location, then you can access that inventory. But the fundamental headline is if you're outside on a planet, you only have access to the things that you're carrying, that are things that are in your pockets, or that are things that are in your backpack, and that's it. So, and when you die or go to the new Downstate, you will obviously leave your items there if you go and respawn back at a hospital. So that's really the crux of healing. Obviously, the people are already familiar with the system itself, and the biggest thing is obviously the removal of the PMA. You'll be able to move your items directly on to your character with the inner thought system, and also will be, as part of that release, will be coming with the asset manager. So you'll have a Mobileglass app that'll be able to show you all of where your stuff is. So you'll be like, okay, where did I leave the Gladius or my Gladius, or where was that armor or this gun? And you'll be able to go and find them and go, okay, that was on Area 18, okay, that's at Port Olisar or wherever. So that's kind of healing in a nutshell. We've talked a lot about the intricacies of healing before, but that kind of covers the small slice of it. The other two, in terms of FPS Redone Scanning and hacking, so I'll cover FPS Redone Scanning first. So FPS Redone Scanning, we are exactly the same as the ship scanning now, or the ship radar and scanning. So we worked with VTT, and myself and my team, we designed the radar and scanning system for both ships and for FPS. We wanted to make it sure that it was, it's using the same systems, it has the same promises and the same premise, so that if you have a really large signature, it's dampening all the other signatures. So I always give the example, which is like, I'm in the shower and my wife's shouting to me. I'm like, I can't hear you because all I can hear is the shower, but she can hear me.
Right.
She can clearly hear me responding back, and she's responding. I'm like, but I can't hear you. So that's what we've implemented as part of it. So that we have this gameplay where you can the cause and effect. So on the FPS side, you'll be able to go in and turn on a generator and maybe hide with that noise. Maybe you can't hear yourself, your emission is low, but maybe they can still find you or whatever. So there's definitely some signature gameplay that'll be introduced on the FPS. It's definitely not supposed to be intended to be bat vision. It's not, it's not like you just go in and turn it on and then you have it on forever. When you do a ping, there will be consequences. People will be notified that they have been pinged, and you flare up all your signatures. So, when you do a ping, what you're actually saying is, I'm shouting into the dark, but I'm giving away my own location. So there's a bit of cat and mouse there where it's like, okay, I'm here by myself. Do I want to give away my location, or do I want to go, no, actually, I'm in a position here where I can flee. I'm going to see if there's anybody in there first, and I'll ping out, there's 5 guys or whoever, I'm getting out of Dodge. Whereas sometimes you might do it and you're like, I haven't seen anybody because somebody's maybe hiding. Maybe they've turned off all of their, turned off a flashlight. They're not using their guns. Right. The one thing to note about the differences between FPS and ships, with a highlight, is that ships passively detect all signatures. So the EM, electromagnetic, IR, infrared, and CS, which is cross-section. Those are the 3 that it passively detects. Cross-section is like visual cross-section. On the FPS side of things, it only passively detects sound. So sound replaces cross-section. And then EMR is the same. And you can only ping for EMIR and DB. So your radar, when you're just passively walking around, only looks for sound. So if somebody, fired off, threw a grenade, used a weapon, is running, it might pick it up, and you'd be like, oh, there's somebody in that direction. But when you ping, you're looking for all of the signatures, and that's when you're giving yourself away and that side of things. And then the scanning side of things is pretty much identical to the ship side of things. You bring up a scan mode, you can scan that person, find out all the different information about them, what they're carrying, what's their active status, what's their org, do they have a criminal record, because you can run their name and so on and forth. So we have that kind of gameplay alongside, so you can, correctly ID someone if you're bounty hunting or so on and so forth. And then with hacking is almost a standalone encapsulated feature. So what we have is we'll be basically repurposing the hacking chips that we have right now. So the hacking chips will still be around. You'll have a hacking chip. You'll need to use that. And the way we're working with the environment team right now to go through all the locations is where you can hack something in. It's essentially you're going and using the maintenance access. So let's say you come to a PC or a ship or whatever. You're plugging into the maintenance access where somebody would come in and go, okay, I'm an IT administrator. I need to get into the system. So they have a skeleton key, should we say. They're putting it in and they're helping fix the problems. You've obviously got an illegal skeleton key, essentially. You're then plugging it in, and then that brings the hacking mini game up on your visor, where you essentially have to manipulate the 3D board to avoid the AI and collect basically fragments of the passcode that you're trying to find. And then when you find these passcodes, you can then put them in, and then that gives you access to whatever that is, whether that's opening a door, a terminal, terminal access, power access, elevators, whatever, the content guys decide they want to do. But essentially that's the premise behind it. And we have a scaling difficulty across hacking. So we have versions without AI where it's just simple and you can just do it yourself. Then we have versions that are time limited with multiple AI. The board's much more complex. And the premise is that a manufacturer in the world has created this 3D program to help people hack without actually having to script or program. So that's kind of where we're at with hacking. And that's obviously will slot into some of the FPS features to create some of the more interesting FPS missions that the guys are working on in the background.
Gotcha. So that's a lot of stuff coming from the gameplay pillar right now. And of course, I do want to reiterate that player healing and personal inventory are on their way for Alpha 3.15. We'll be covering those more in depth on ISC next quarter. Hacking we will also cover as it gets closer to its implementation. That could be 3.15, it could be whatever. It's when things are ready. And then FPS radar, the same boat. When it's ready, when all the resources are ticked and it's good to go, same deal there.
Yep.
It definitely sounds like a lot of what you said today. It sounds like it's dangerous to go along, or it's dangerous to go alone. Bring friends.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, that is we're pushing the game towards what Chris has always had in his head. You know, that vision of that game. You know, anything that we add is in line with what Chris wants to add to the game. I mean, all of these features have been prioritized by Chris to add to the game, and you know, space is scary. It's dangerous. You know, you're exploring these unknown planets or known planets, but you know, if you just went to Africa, or you went to you know, a North Arctic expedition, or you were going to, you know, go on the Amazon, or anywhere that is not just your familiar surroundings, you're going to have to prepare for those environments. So, you know, is it going to be hot? Is it going to be arid? You know, is there going to be bugs? Am I going to have to take tablets? Or, you know, do I need certain clothing to help me? And just as you're going on an expedition on just Earth, you know, we're talking about, you know, going to all these different planets, these different moons, and all these different, you know, cave expeditions. And you need to, you know, as part of that gameplay loop, you need to understand, like, you know, you're only going to have the things that you take with you. And so it's up to you. And also, you know, when you store stuff in your ship, if your ship blows up, those are the things that you're going to potentially lose on that ship. So, you know, you're going to have meaningful decisions, and then those decisions will have consequences, and that will create a feeling that you are, you know, more immersive exploring this universe, rather than just like, oh, I'm in the bottom of a cave, I'll just bring up my PMA and I have access to whatever I bought, you know, thousands of it, which is not, you know, it like playing a game with cheats on. It diminishes what you're trying to achieve and the fun that you're trying to have, because the challenge is there for you to overcome.
Right.
So yeah, it's good to start getting some of those gameplay loops in there.
All right, so that's a lot of things to look forward to. We, of course, are still pushing hard on Alpha 3.14. Keep your eyes and ears open to the robertsspaceindustries.com website while ISC is on hiatus for updates about that. Rich, thank you for taking the time to be here on the show.
No worries.
We'll see you. We'll see you next quarter for the ISC segments on all of these. So take care, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.